Welcome back to the Piping Pastor. Well, today we'll be moving on in our Donne devotional series by taking a look at what is um, truly eternally real. I guess would be a good way to put that. And for this wee little chat, I'm smoking today in my Faber pipe. This is the pipe made for the Faber Tobacco Company in Baltimore by their pipe maker before they closed down. They were around for about 100 years. The pipe maker wasn't, but they were around for about 100 years, sold tobaccos and pipes and things like that. And they had an in-house pipe maker who did a special line just for that tobacco store. And they closed early 2000s, I think. It's really too bad. It's a beautiful pipe. First of all, you can see all the various different techniques used in this. Smokes really well. A nice big deep bowl. So I don't know if that pipe maker is still around doing stuff or not, but I know the company's gone. The tobacco shop is gone, unfortunately. But in it today, I am smoking my bijou mixture. And I call it my bijou mixture because it's something I had to kind of tinker with. Bijou is an Oriental blend by Cornell and Deal, for those of you who don't know. And it's a mixture of red Virginias and I think Katerini, Turkish Orientals. And I first picked it up a little over a year ago. And it was one of those blends where the components were really good and really strong, but neither one yielded to the other. So it was typically in a blend, there's something that's forward. The Latakia is forward, or the Burley is forward, and you have a Perique or a Virginia in the background, or usually some kind of like Cavendish tobacco kind of melding things together. That was not the case with this one. It was these red Virginias that were just punching through as hard as they could, and the Orientals were not giving ground at all. It was like immovable force and immovable object, unstoppable force. And for me, it didn't make for a pleasant, enjoyable smoke. It wasn't even one of those things where they're so poignant in the blend that you can, oh, I got this now, no, I got this now. It's like literally like they were both fighting in the pipe. So when I got back from London, I went to the Sager and Snuff tobacco shop when I was in London, and I got a bunch of blending components from them. And so when I came back, I mixed equal parts of the bijou. So I think I had like a 2-ounce tin of bijou. So I had 2 ounces of bijou, and then 2 ounces of Latakia, and 2 ounces of Cavendish Virginias, and I blended them all together in equal parts. And since then, now it's pretty good. So the Orientals and the red Virginias are still there, and they're still very noticeable, but they're not screaming at each other anymore. But that's my taste. You may like it just the way it is. For me, it needs a little tinkering. It's another fun part about our hobby, our lifestyle, if you want to think of it that way. The component parts of it, we can move around with ourselves. You can make your own blends, get your own blending components, experiment with different blends and mixing stuff together, and it can be a lot of fun. Sometimes you end up getting something that's awful. That's another nice thing about this community, though. What one person thinks is awful, someone else may be the blend of their life. So experiment, have some fun, mix some stuff up. If you think it tastes terrible, then get someone's address, send them a couple ounces, or send them a sample and say, hey, can you take this? Because I can't. Anyway, this will be our last meditation from Donne's Book of Devotions. At the end of this book, he has an entire sermon. It's the last sermon he ever preached. And I'm not going to go get into that whole sermon, but I thought after this it might be fun to go through some of the old sermons I have, some of the old stuff from not just John Donne, but from Andrew Marvell and from Spurgeon, because I have a complete collection of Spurgeon stuff as well. and we can start digging into some of those really old sermons, because those pastors, those preachers, those ministers really dove deep into the scriptures. I think nowadays, I'm guilty of it too, as a pastor myself. You have like 15, 20 minutes to capture people's attention. In some churches I preached in, Pentecostal churches and so forth, you can preach for an hour and they're fine. But for the most part, Potter Piper can back me up on this. I think his homilies are probably limited to about 15, 20 minutes. Generally speaking, after 20 minutes, people are like, okay, start looking at their watches. So you have to hit your points and get in and make your let the scripture speak as it's meant to be spoken in about 20 minutes. That's not the case in the 17th and 18th centuries, and even into the 19th centuries. These pastors and these preachers, they could spend a lot of time. They could take one verse and write a page and a half on it and go through the whole thing, and everyone would just sit and listen. It's a slower society back then. There weren't nearly as many distractions as there are now. So I think it'll be helpful to look at some of those sermons. And don't worry, I won't go through every hour-long sermon in each video, but we'll chop it up and we'll look at a sermon in its entirety, but we'll do it in smaller snippets so it can be more easily digested. So there's a lot of good words in there, as there is here today. And this is rather more moist than I remember. I jarred this up several months ago, and it's the first time I've gotten it back out. Happily retained its moisture, but unhappily I didn't dry it out first before I put it in the pipe. And as usual, I'm talking too much. But it is delicious. Okay. This is nature's nest of boxes. The heavens contain the earth, cities, men. We talked about this before, the gender-specific language, humanity, right? And all these are concentric. The common center to them all is decay and ruin. Only that is eccentric, which was never made, only that place, or garment rather, which we can imagine but not demonstrate. That light, which is the very emanation of the light of God, in which the saints shall dwell, and in which the saints shall be appealed, not only bends to this center, does not bend to this ruin. That which was not made of nothing, it is not threatened with this annihilation. So, basically what he's saying is all physical existence is in concentric circles, from bigger to smaller. Everything that we can see, know, and touch. This was, of course, prior to the days of modern science, obviously, but that's essentially the thing that he's talking about. And in his view, it would have been referred to as natural philosophy. But the measurable aspects of reality, that which science deals with, physics deals with, and so on and so forth, that which can be seen, known, and measured. From the greatest to the smallest, all revolves around this central idea, and that is decay. That is annihilation. That it is not permanent. It can last for a very long time, but at the end of the day, all these things from the biggest to the smallest, the biggest things we can see and measure out there, all the way down to the teeny tiny, microscopic, minuscule things, they all decay. The only thing that does not is that which lies outside this concentric circle. That is the light that emanates, that gives birth and life to these concentric circles. So essentially there is what he's making long before the theory of the Big Bang and the universe beginning at t equals 0. He's saying that the creation of all things has in common that it will eventually come to nothing. Whether you think about, the universal background radiation and the cold death of the universe and mass expansion and all these various different things, is that it all is going to end. But there's one thing that doesn't, and that is the thing that breathed life into all these things. All other things are, angels, even our souls, move upon the same poles. They bend to the same center. And if they were not made immortal by preservation, their nature could not keep them from sinking into the center of annihilation. So he's saying even the things that we can't really see, even the things that we can't really even measure, like our spiritual existence and angels and so on and so forth, even they would bend towards this annihilation if they did not draw their nature. They were not, if they were not preserved by this immortal being, right? So there has to be something else out there. Otherwise, everything just goes away, right? Everything just ends up in nothingness. In all these, the frame of the heavens, the states upon the earth, and the men in them, comprehend all. Those are the greatest mischiefs which are least discerned. The most insensible in their ways come to be the most sensible in their ends. The heavens have had their dropsy. They have drowned the world. They shall have their fever and burn the world. Of the dropsy, the flood, the world had a foreknowledge, 120 years before it came, and so made some provision against it, and were saved. The fever shall break out in an instant and consume all. The dropsy did harm to the heavens from which it fell, but it did not put out those lights. It did not quench those heats. It did not quench those fires. So he's saying all these things that happen, the happenstances of life, right? And he refers initially to the flood in Genesis. They had all these warnings, so they were able to prepare and survive, but it killed everything else on the planet, right? And then he refers in a modern sense, dropsy, which was a common medical malady at the time that was fatal, and then the fevers and things like that have come. And he's like, all these things that happen, these great natural disasters, these divinely oriented natural disasters, fevers, plagues, all these different things. They're all manners of decay and annihilation, but none of them touch the source of all life, that light in the heavens, that fire that cannot be quenched. Though the dog star have a pestilent breath, an infectious exultation, yet because we know when it will rise, we clothe ourselves, we diet ourselves, we shadow ourselves to a sufficient prevention. But comets and blazing stars, whose effects or significations no man can interpret or frustrate, no man can foresee, no almanac tells us when a blazing star will break out. The matter is carried up in secret. No astrologer tells us when the effects will be accomplished, for that is a secret of a higher sphere than the other. That which is most secret is most dangerous. So he goes on to say that we can't predict any of these things. We think we can. We can rise and clothe ourselves and diet ourselves and control A, B, and C, and we can look at the dog star, the North Star, and see its constancy, the sunrise and the sunset. And we measure our lives by these things. But in reality, all that is fading. All that is going away. All that eventually will come to naught. Our sun, at the sun of our solar system, the sunrise and sunset, even that will eventually, burst and expand and then contract and become a black hole, and then it's gone, right? So he keeps on drawing these analogies and saying, even the things you think are permanent are not. Even the things you think that you can count on, you really can't. The only one thing you can count on is the source of all of it, and that is God. The thing that is beyond all measurable reality, the thing that supports all of measurable reality, the thing that breathes life into the universe, that is the only true constant, the immortal constant. That is the thing that we must look to. Can't get distracted by what you think is permanent, because the one thing that is permanent is the one above. And I love how he puts that it's most dangerous. It reminds me of in the Chronicles of Narnia, when Lucy is talking to Mr. Beaver about Aslan, because Aslan, of course, is a lion. It's like, is he safe? And Mr. Beaver goes, of course he's not safe, but he's good. We make that mistake a lot. We think safe. We think kind, merciful. But there's another side there. But that's not part of this devotion. That's just me riffing. So, in any case, as Donne says, spend your time looking to the true permanency of the universe. Don't just stare to watch. Well, that is it for the Donne devotions. So I look forward next time to getting into some old school preaching and breaking down some of those really good old sermons. So until then, I hope you have a lovely week. As always, happy reading.